this video, I'll be discussing one of the standout features of SQL Safe, its advanced restore capabilities. SQL Safe is more than just a robust backup solution. It's designed to provide flexibility and efficiency when it comes to restoring your SQL Server environment. Let's dive into the three key features that make SQL Safe a game changer: virtual database, object level recovery, and instant restore. So, what is virtual database? It's a feature that enables you to create a fully functional virtual database directly from your backup files without the need for a physical restore. It's perfect for scenarios like data analysis, testing, and troubleshooting, as it provides immediate access to your backup data without the overhead of restoring it to disk. Whether you're verifying data integrity or running reports, SQL Virtual Database makes the process seamless and efficient. So let's jump into a quick demo of Virtual Database. Now, in order to perform this demo, I need a full backup using the SQL Safe file format, which I have here. Now, to actually begin the virtual database, all I have to do is click on Mount Virtual Database. I have to select my target, and in my case, I'm going to go with this 1010 server, which is the local server. I'm going to click Next. It'll ask me which backup do I want to restore or mount the virtual database of. It'll have to be a database that I've previously performed the backup on. And again, I'm going to go ahead and go with my Northwind database. When I click Next, it automatically selects the latest full backup, which is the one that I'll be using. On this screen, it asks me the name of the virtual database, and by default, it's simply going to append underscore VDB at the name of the original database, which is going to be perfectly fine for me. Now, take note of the destination path of the database files are going. These files are not going to be created at your typical database file location. Instead, we have a specific path where we can create our virtual database files. Now, you can use any path here. I'm just going to go with default. Click Next. And I'm not going to configure any notifications for this demo. Click Next. I'm going to review my details of the operation that I am going to perform, which is mounting a virtual database. And I'm going to go ahead and click Mount Virtual Database. Now, what this actually does is that it creates some files on disk at that path that we were just looking at. Now, these files, for the most part, are going to be ghost files, like the MDF and the LDF files. The operating system is going to believe that it is actually on disk, when in fact, we're just ghosting those particular files. If we go real quick and look at the particular path, you can see the MDF and the LDF file that was created. But in addition, you'll also see these VBM files. Now, these VBM files are what we call our sparse files. We're essentially tracking the changes to your databases as it is mounted. But all of the data, if you start querying the database, it's coming directly out of the backup file. And if I refresh here, you can see my virtual database is listed. If I go into SQL Server Management Studio, refresh the list of databases, you will see that the VDB does exist. And if I expand it, it looks just like an actual database. And if I query it, it returns results as expected. Now, whenever you're running queries through SQL Server Management Studio or any product that's accessing that particular virtual database, what SQL Safe is doing is that we're intercepting calls to that particular database and reading the data directly out of the backup file and passing it back to SQL Server Management Studio so they can see the results. Again, perfect for running tests or running reports. When you're done with the database, you can actually right-click on it and delete it from here, or you can go back to SQL Safe and select the unmount option. Click yes, and it actually detaches or unmounts the database from the SQL Server instance. And if I come here, refresh, that database is no longer listed. Likewise, if I do the same thing from SQL Server Management Studio, the database would have been dropped. Now, the other advanced restore feature that I want to talk about is the object level recovery. Now, the object level recovery is actually kind of based off of virtual database. In fact, when we're running the object level recovery, we are going to mount the virtual database first, perform the object level recovery, and then drop that virtual database. So when are you going to use object level recovery? Well, object level recovery is going to be ideal for those situations where you don't need to restore the entire database. I mean, maybe you just need a specific table, a specific view, or a store procedure. So with SQL Safe, you can recover individual database objects quickly and efficiently without the hassle of performing the full database restore. This not only saves you time, but also ensures minimal disruption to your environment. So let me give you a quick example of using the object level recovery. Now, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. My system's not very fast, not very speedy, so the object will recover operation itself does take a little bit of time in my environment. Your experience may vary. So let's go ahead real quick. I'm going to right click on my target SQL Server instance, and I am going to select the option object level recovery. Again, I'm going to go with my 1010 server for my target. I'm going to use the Northwind database as my source. And again, just like before, it's went ahead and automatically selected that full. Here, I have to give the object resulting database a name. In this particular case, by default, is going to use the original database name and append underscore OLR to the name of it. Over here, this is where I go ahead and select which object I want to go ahead and restore. In my particular case, let's go with the employees table. I'm going to go ahead and click next. No notifications for me. Review my summary and go ahead and click recover. Now, as I mentioned, it does break it off into two steps, right? So if I refresh SQL Server here, you can see it's creating a virtual database. Notice that this icon looks a little bit different from the rest of the databases. And it does say virtual database for restore. Now, as I mentioned, this does take a little bit of time in my environment, so please be patient. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but SQL Safe just made a backup of my Northwind underscore 2 database, and the status just popped up. That, of course, happened while I am still performing this object level recovery operation. Okay, so SQL Safe has completed the object level recovery. If I come over here, refresh my 1010 server, you can see that the virtual database is no longer there, and all I am left with is the Northwind underscore OLR database. Now, if I go into SQL Server Management Studio and again refresh the list of my databases, I'll be able to find that OLR database, expand it, expand tables, and just as you would expect, the only thing here is that employees table. Now, let's move on to the next advanced restore feature, which is called instant restore. Now, imagine your database goes down, right, and you can't afford an extended downtime. Now, with SQL Safe Instant Restore, your database is available almost immediately by mounting the backup file as a live database while the restore operation completes in the background. This ensures users have access to critical data as quickly as possible and reducing the impact of unexpected outages. Now, as I mentioned, or as I believe I mentioned, Instant Restore is also based off of virtual database. So what we do with Instant Restore is that we are actually breaking your restore operations into two phases. The first phase, we're essentially restoring the database structure, the tables, the schema of the database. And once that's done, we actually bring the database online. And then we move into our second phase of the restore operation, which is called the hydration phase. It's during this time where we are still pumping data into your database files. But during this time, your users can actually access the database and use it as a live database. It's a really neat feature, and I'm going to demonstrate it here. So again, I will be working with my Northwind database. I am going to go ahead and do a restore database, which obviously opens up the SQL Safe restore wizard. Here, I'm going to select my target. I'm going to go with the 1010 server. Database that I want to restore is going to be that Northwind database again. Actually, let me select a bigger database. Hopefully I have a backup of this database. And the reason why I want to go with a bigger database is so that you can see how there's two different phases of the operation. And I am going to call this _2 just so that I don't overwrite my existing one. And recovery state, I want this to be fully accessible. The restore type, this is where you would select the instant restore option. No notifications for me. Review my summary and click restore to get the operation started. So I'm going to come here, refresh, and you can see right here that the scheme of the database has already been restored 2 seconds later, and or 2 seconds. It took 2 seconds to complete, and then moved on to the hydration phase, and that took 5 seconds to complete. Now, obviously, my database is not large enough for me to quickly demonstrate that I can actually could have queried to start querying the database while the hydration phase was happening. But if you're interested in this feature and you have large databases, you can actually use this in your environment to test it out. Now, to kind of give you an example, I once spoke to a customer where they had an unfortunate outage because of flooding, and they had to restore their environment. And one of the databases, his particular example was one of his databases was several terabytes in size. It would have normally taken him 14 hours to restore the database. And so that meant that it would have taken him 14 hours before users were able to access that database and perform work. Obviously the entire workday is gone in that situation. So he decided to leverage our instant restore operation. Now, obviously 14 terabyte, several terabyte database, sorry, I didn't mean to say 14, but several terabyte database is going to take some time. We're not going to be able to make the database instantly accessible like here in my 2 seconds. But we are going to make the database accessible quicker than 14 hours. And in this particular customer's case, he was able to access his database at a little over an hour after he started his instant restore. So again, having the capability of being able to gain access to your database, relatively instantly compared to a typical restore is quite valuable. Uh, it allows you to actually access your data while that restore is actually ongoing, and it's very ideal for databases that are large in size or critical in nature. Here, I want to go ahead and wrap up. SQL Safe Advanced Restore features include the virtual database, object level recovery, and instant restore. They provide unparalleled flexibility and efficiency in managing SQL Server. These tools help reduce downtime, streamline workflows, and adapt to the specific recovery needs of your organization. SQL Safe isn't just about backing data. It's about ensuring that you can restore it exactly when and how you need it to. Thank you for your time and hope you enjoyed the video.